Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Visionary Dawn podcast, and today I have my guest here, Alyssa Charpentier, and she is a fantasy writer, right? And
Yes.
and we're going to discuss a little bit about her work today. And first thing I wanted to ask you was, how did you get started as a writer?
How did I get started? Well, this will make my Godzilla people happy. I got started technically with Godzilla fan fiction. I was writing that since I was a small child, and then I decided, you know what? I want to write my own monsters, so I did.
Did you start out reading the G Fan magazine fan fictions that used to get published?
No, but later on, when I was in junior high, I discovered the Kaiju War Chronicles on the Toho Kingdom website. So I did have some introduction to fan fiction from other people, but when I was like a little kid, I just came up with my own little things, and I still have my first like little book, quote unquote, um, called Godzilla and Mothra: The Good Old Days. I still have that from third grade, and I illustrated it very badly, and it's like this little story, so I still have that.
Yeah, it's really funny you mentioned that with the Kaiju Wars thing. I remember the first time they put that on Toho Kingdom, and it like the moment they dropped it, it was 2004. It was in
Cool.
May. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, it was 2004 when they did it, and when they dropped it on there, like there was a flood of stuff came in there, and I used to read stories on there. Like my favorite one was the Gamera and Godzilla team up where they fight King Ghidorah and Gaios. That was my favorite one. I used to read on there.
Nice.
Yeah. And when you're mentioning the Mechagodzilla thing, there was one time like well, not Mechagodzilla, I mean the story you wrote and illustrated. When I was in second grade, I wrote a little mini Godzilla story, and it was Godzilla fighting Mechagodzilla, and that was something
Nice.
second grade. So that brought
Did you
back.
illustrate
I did, and it
it?
was stick. It was like Godzilla's like stick figures. I think I still
Nice.
my mom has it. I'll have to send you that sometime. But my next question, though, is since that's how you got a little bit started, did any of that from like the fan fictions, did that kind of spill into your later original work that you did?
Um, so the writing style or
Yeah, like the writing
what
style.
about it?
Yeah.
Yes, I mean I kind of basically cut my teeth on stories like that, so um that was kind of like the training ground for me for writing my own stuff was taking characters that already existed, taking my own interpretation of them, and then learning from there how to recognize characters and how to create characters too.
Yeah. And for your newest material that you have now, so like this new book series you got, where did that start from?
That was um I honestly can't even remember why I started writing it, aside from like some people I knew, um, some little situations I had been in. But aside from that, it was kind of just like I wanted to write a fantasy, and I wanted over the years the plot developed more and the reasons behind it, the motivations developed more. But initially, I just wanted to write a fantasy about this monstrous young girl, and it took shape and it fleshed out over the years as I was preparing to publish it. But yeah, I love like monstrous females, like that's just cool to me. So that was part of it.
Yeah, and it's very interesting. Do you want to tell the audience a little bit about it?
So yeah, my debut series, the Merc Maiden trilogy, MYRK, is a dark fantasy series, kind of slash coming of age. Like a lot of people have recognized the coming of age elements, so I'm glad that I decided to call it coming of age because it kind of is. It's a story about a young girl who discovers she's been born into a society of dark magic sorcerers, and they want to use her to destroy the world and rid it of light, both physical but mostly metaphysical and metaphorical. They want to wipe out what they see as evil, which we would perceive as goodness. And so she goes on this journey, kind of discovering who she is, what she believes in, who she wants to be, and what she wants to be. Kind of her finding her purpose in this world where she has magic and a lot of people have an agenda for her. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun to write that.
It sounds like a coming of age story, but also like figuring out like where she fits in the world too. Like again, like you said, like trying to
Yes,
figure herself out. Was any from your personal
right.
kind of put into there? Like, you know what I mean? Like just maybe you growing up or something?
Yes, actually, there's a lot of her in me kind of, maybe to a point that it's almost self-insert level, but I don't want to say that because it sounds bad. But I do think, this was my first major character that I really did something serious with. So there is a lot of me in her and a lot of figuring things out and similar situations, even though obviously her situations are much more dramatized and much more fantastical. There is a lot of both of us kind of figuring stuff out and wrestling through things. And I've noticed that as I've become a better person, a less rough person, she also is becoming that in the text. Because in book one, I mean, she's kind of nasty. Like she'll speak her mind, she'll say things or be sarcastic or something, kind of like I used to be. But now, as we're both growing, we're both progressing, even her in the text, like she is changing as I'm changing, and we're both realizing things at the same time. It's kind of weird. Like there is like almost this life thread between us in a sense, as we both grow because we are very similar and we both have similar things that we need to figure out and fix. So there is a lot of personal stuff in there and in the character.
It kind of sounds like both of you are going through a character arc at the same time.
Yeah, yeah, right. My character arc over the course of 3 books. So, and I've learned lessons every single year. I hope I'm becoming a better person every year. Um, I'll look back on things and the way I used to react to certain situations and people, and I've just gotten better at that. I've got smarter. And so I think it's really cool to be in such a developmental period of life. I mean, your younger years, it's a lot of those are formative years. So I'm writing a book a year practically, and every year my writing gets better, the story gets better, the character gets better. And it's really cool to grow with her each successive year. So yeah, I mean, it has been a journey for sure.
Yeah, it sounds like it's been like an exciting journey, a little bit of an
Oh
adventure
yeah.
because you've been adding all
Yes.
great little details and stuff, and you've been
Right.
finding out new things about yourself in it. And a funny thing that you mentioned about adding a little bit of you into the character, did you know Stephen King from who wrote Misery? He
Oh,
added
yes.
the main character of Misery is him. Like a
That's hilarious. Why am I not surprised by that? That makes sense.
in fact, the whole thing of him like moving out to a cabin to write and be alone for a little bit. Stephen King used to do that.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and he even
That's
said
funny.
Misery was based off of his worst nightmare, which is being trapped by a fan forcing him to write.
That that makes so much sense. Like I genuinely I'm not surprised because that really seems like even when I first heard the synopsis of the book or just the general idea, the author gets kidnapped by the fan. I'm like, I wonder if Stephen King wrote this about himself, like his own worst fear. That's funny.
Yeah, it's
That makes sense.
yeah. Uh,
Hmm.
what was the next thing? Is there any writer like particular authors or writers that maybe inspired you a little bit, like aside from the fan fiction stuff?
Well, you mentioned Stephen King. I really like his stuff and the way he gets into the characters' heads, which I definitely consciously used in my books. So much credit to him for that. He's just really good at writing horror, whether it's a looming sense of dread or just straight up gore, whatever it is. I also really like Frank Peretti, who wrote This Present Darkness. He is a Christian fantasy writer, um, and he is not afraid to write about dark content and about dark realities. So I really respect him for kind of trailblazing that genre and making it to where, we're able to talk about this stuff without cowering in fear or hush hush about it. He just writes about it. Yep, demons attacking people, a bunch of sin and stuff. Great. Yes, put it on the pages. Like, I tell you what, I have been reading books in the Christian fantasy genre, and I am not super happy by them because they just don't really take risks, and they're not willing to go where Frank Peretti would go. And anybody can enjoy Frank Peretti's work.
Yeah,
Not such is the case for regular Christian fantasy. I struggle to enjoy it as a Christian. Like, it's really hard to enjoy it because it's just so safe and careful. And that's okay. Like, I'm not going to tell someone what to write or what not to write. Anyone can write whatever they want. And wholesome content is very welcome. I love wholesome content. But there comes a point where if you're writing books about, fantastical things, I expect some fantasy. I expect some high stakes and risks. So Frank Peretti would take those risks in his writing. And he's a very good writer. So I would add him on there.
yeah, and that's something I was gonna say too. Is like, yeah, like a lot of Christian fantasy, they don't want to take any risks and stuff. That's kind of
No,
that's what turned me away from it. Was because like, yeah, like they didn't take any real risk, and it was like, well, this doesn't pull me in. You know what I mean?
right.
Yeah. And by the way, I'm actually a Catholic. I'm wearing the temple.
Okay.
I'm wearing the Templar
Yes,
cross right on me right now.
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you understand like the importance of faith, but if people aren't going to give the characters a reason to have faith, as in, dire circumstances or some kind of something that would force them to grow as characters, I don't know what the point is. And nobody needs to write a Daughter Darkness, okay? Nobody needs to write what I'm writing. My writing is a bit out there, it's a bit much, but please put some risks in your writing. Make people care, because it's so hard to care when nothing's happening, you know?
I
Like,
wonder.
make something happen.
So I actually had a theory just now. It hit me. I wonder if part of it, like, if these are like self-published books, it's different.
They
But
are,
oh, the ones you've read are self-published.
yes.
Okay, so in that case, then yeah, like that. But I was talking about with like maybe like a publisher might have changed it and stuff. Because so something funny a lot of people don't know is, do you know the Plague Dogs, or do you know the book? Are you familiar with it?
Mm-mm.
Okay, do you know Watership Down, like the book Watership Down?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so he wrote a second book. It was called The Plague Dogs, which is about these two dogs that escape from a laboratory and they're supposedly infected with the bubonic plague. And they have
Oh,
to learn how to survive on their own. So these two dogs basically become like wolves and they start hunting out in the New England lake area, and a fox teaches them how to be like wild animals. Well, eventually word gets out about the lab, like them skipping the lab and stuff where they were experimented on, and there's the fear that they're carrying the bubonic plague because they knocked a thing over of it and stuff.
mm.
So they send the military out to go and try and kill them and stuff. Well, the ending to the book, the original ending that he wrote, the publisher said it was just too depressing that it was never published. Now, here's the weird thing:
Mm.
he wrote like a last minute like kind of deus ex machina thing where it's like, oh, the dogs just conveniently get saved. And what it was is that the ending of it is that the dogs are cornered on the Irish beach, and the his friend, it's like a England Terrier, looks out and says, I see an island out there, let's go out and get away from these men trying to shoot us. And in the original ending to the book, they go out there and there is no island. The dog's supposedly
Oh,
drowned, or it's implied that they shot him on the beach and they're traveling to the afterlife.
yeah.
That was the original draft he wrote, and the
Mm.
publisher said it's just too depressing and just no. So in the published version of the book, they go out in the water, and the original owner of one of the dogs just happens to magically find them, and they're rescued,
Wow.
but it just comes out of nowhere. Now,
So contrived.
right, but
Yeah.
But here's the good thing, though. Here's the good thing. The movie, the animated film adaptation of the book, uses the original script. So, like,
Hmm.
it's a draft. So, this is one of the rare cases in cinema also where the movie is actually closer to the book than the book is closer to the book.
Wow,
Because
that's crazy.
the writer worked with the director on the movie and said, "Yeah, I want the original ending here." But here's the bad thing: because the movie was so depressing because of the ending, barely anybody knows about the movie, but everybody knows about
Wow,
because it's got the happy ending.
fake. Yeah,
Yeah, I had to tell you that.
censorship.
I just yeah I had
Yeah,
to.
publishers will do that. Publishers will make you change your material, and it's part of why I don't really want to go through a publisher unless I laid out the rules and said, "Hey, I'll change stuff that's bad, like plot problems or stuff that just doesn't make sense, stuff that needs to be fixed, but I'm not going to change the heart of the story." And this book, like my books, never would have been accepted for publication. I really don't think this series was ever going to be chosen for that. So,
Hmm. Well, you never like here's the thing, you never know, but I the best advice I was given from another friend who's a writer, which is that it's the same thing with like getting your art or something published in a magazine. They told me and said like you have to be careful on like who the publisher is you work with. So like you just
right,
ask some obvious, ask some good questions and you start to figure out, okay, like are they going to try and possibly change my work or not, and just
right,
from there just kind of like pick through is the thing.
right.
In fact, I'm actually working on something for GFan magazine right now. Actually,
Nice.
I'll talk. I'll tell you about that later, though. But anyway, my next thing I was going to ask is, you've been living in Japan for a while now, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So has anything from your experience in Japan, like started to feed into your novels or your writing?
Oh, that's so funny. So, I'm gonna out myself here. Um, before I went to Japan, and this was before I knew that I was going. In book two, which is about to release, my character goes to this island nation, this archipelago, um, with one huge mainland, and it's like warm and it's kind of tropical, and it's got jungles and stuff. And as I was writing this, I then found out that I was getting stationed in Japan, and I wrote some of the setting at the island nation before I went. But then as I was making revisions to the book, it was really weird because it ended up being uh that the people dress in robes, which is kind of like kimono. Um, there's this culture of humility and a love of the arts and a love of beautiful things, which is very Japanese. Well, from what I've seen anyway, they really like beauty. But they're also very functional, like that they like function too. Um, what else? There's so many things. They have very indulgent desserts. And Japan's desserts are pretty light, but they're still like really kind of indulgent. Pastries. And then what was it? I'm trying to remember. Oh, so if you've heard of Aokigahara, aka the Suicide Forest, this wasn't even intentional, but there's a forest on this island where people will go and see in the forest because there's these evil spirits in it, and they will take their own lives or take other people's lives. It's a very evil like forest, so you feel this presence. And everyone I've known who's been to the Suicide Forest here, they all say that it has this dark, heavy presence, and that they'll hear stuff and see stuff, and that people will go in there and whether they're trying to or not, a lot of people end up losing their lives in there because they get stuck in there or something happens, they get lost. So this forest where that happens is in the book. And so there's like so many things. There's also a city, this modern developed city. Uh, further inland in the island, whereas the rest of the island is kind of rural and not very developed. And what's interesting is Japan is like that. The rural areas, they don't have internet, they don't have, man, they have like really old buildings, like 50s, 60s. There's not really a lot of transportation, not very many supermarkets. It's just dead out there. And I mean, we're talking dead, like deader than rural America. Um,
Better
and
than
so it's
County did.
it's so dead. Like it's old. It's not just oh like maybe a decade or so old. I mean it is old school out there. So on this island in my book, they've got the rural areas where nothing's really advanced, and then they've got this huge metropolis type thing like Tokyo. And that's a lot like what Japan is. Japan still uses fax machines.
Yeah,
Um,
that's surprising.
and they use a lot of older technology and older things, but they also have a lot of new technology. So it's really weird how kind of subconsciously or just not really intentionally this island nation came to be a lot like Japan. The manners, the customs, they bow. It's a lot like Japan. So I guess yeah, Japan ended up in there. Actually, I'll send you a link to the theme, the anthem of this island nation. It sounds very Japanese, and that was straight up inspired by Japan. Like there was no subconscious anything. I wanted the shamisen in there. So or whatever I had. I don't even remember what instruments I had. A lot of Japanese instruments with my program. So that was kind of like the music and the instruments are very Japanese on this island. So yeah, Japan's in there. Long story short, or not short.
Yeah, it sounds like you took like a lot in there. I was gonna say so many
Yeah,
stuff. Like, okay, I took an island, this tropics, and
yeah.
let's say, oh,
It's got a bunch of little islands,
yeah, I was gonna say
little islands off the mainland.
you took Hawaii. I know it.
Oh man.
Yeah. But so from yeah, you had like a lot from Japan in there. And I was gonna say, like, out of all the places you've been to in Japan, what is your favorite one aside from the very was it the cursed forest as it's been called sometimes over.
Oh, I really loved Izu Oshima. It's one of the seven wonder islands of Tokyo. So it's technically in Tokyo Bay, but it's like 60 miles away in the middle of the ocean. And Izu Oshima, fun fact, has Mount Mihara, the volcano which Godzilla falls into and then comes out of in Godzilla vs. Biollante. So I got to go see that. I walked all the way out there to that volcano. I mean, I walked 7 miles uphill to get to the volcano, and then a mile or two out to the volcano. I ended up walking like, man, 15 miles or something that day. I had like 30 some thousand steps on my meter. And I got to go out there and see where Godzilla fell into the volcano. And I got to walk around it. I saw like the steam belching through the little vents in the ground. It was so cool. It was beautiful out there. The
That's
vegetation, the flowers. I mean, it was magical. A magical place. Best place I've ever been.
I've always wanted to visit Mount Mihara. It was on my
Ugh,
bucket ever since I was a
see it.
yeah. I I
You
I,
have to see it.
I need to see it. In fact,
You do.
I was going to make a joke. I was going to say, he said, like, yeah, I got up to like the top. I said, you didn't jump in? You didn't reenact the
Well,
famous.
people do. People do. So I found out, I guess I shouldn't have been surprised by this, but that was a popular, like, suicide spot for people in Japan. So they put a fence around it. But I didn't see this fence, or at least the fence I saw did not look like it would keep anybody out. I could have easily jumped all the way in there. I could have walked down to the center and just sat there. I mean, nothing would have happened to me. It's not like it's an active volcano, as in there's not actively any lava right there. So I could have gone down there, but you're not supposed to. But
Yeah,
yeah, that was an actual like jumping spot for people, which is creepy. It's like, wow.
know that. That is creepy. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's this thing they called the Curse of Godzilla. The first eruption of Mount Mihara, or the most recent, the first of the recent ones, trying to remember. I think it was like, what was that? 83? I'm gonna look it up right now. Anyway, um, when did Mount Mihara erupt? It erupted April 15th. No, not April 15th. Throw that away. That's some other volcano. Not even the right one. I'm trying to find it. It last erupted in 86 before Violante came out and after Return of Godzilla came out, but they also count a 1990 eruption, which was a smaller eruption, which was obviously after Violante.
Hmm.
So some people count the 86 eruption as the last one, and other people count the 90. But they say that they call it, the Japanese locals call it the curse of Godzilla, that Godzilla being featured in movies where he was in the volcano kind of caused the volcano to erupt, which I thought was cool.
Yeah,
Um,
that's really cool. I had no, yeah, I never heard of this, like this whole cultural thing where they thought the
oh
volcano.
yeah.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
it's nothing like I never would have expected it to look like this. Like you just gotta be there. No picture is gonna do it justice. You don't understand what it looks like or how it feels until you're really there and you're seeing it. You gotta go see it. Like it's really the best experience. And then the island's got these beautiful, like bright blue tidal pools and snorkeling waters and diving waters. It's amazing. I saw so many things just peeking my head under the water with my little snorkel goggles. I saw little crabs and fish. It was so cool. It was
What
an amazing place.
fish did you see out?
Huh. Sorry, what'd you say?
Oh, so what kind of fish did you see out there? Like when you're snorkeling?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know my fish. They were colorful. That's all I know. And there was a good amount of them. They were pretty small, but oh, it was amazing. There's a whole ecosystem there. And
Yeah.
10 out of 10 recommend Izu Oshima.
Oh, that gets me so excited. I love snorkeling. So every time
Yeah.
I go to North Carolina, like the Outer Banks, like go straight in there, I become a fish basically.
Oh
So,
yeah.
yeah, that's
Yep. I love it too. It's great.
yeah. Mentioning the Godzilla things, I was actually going to ask you, do you remember, or you might have heard about it? So the week before Godzilla versus Destroya hit theaters in Japan, their a nuclear power plant actually shut down. Did you ever hear about that?
I didn't. Which one? Which power plant?
So I don't have the name on me at the top of my head. I'd have to like go and like pull it up, but the plant shut down the week before, and when the movie was coming out in theaters, they thought it was like a kind of an omen thing
Wow.
because of the publicity they did where they said Godzilla's going to die and stuff.
Yeah.
They thought it was a bad omen caused by that, like just the power plant
Wow.
would disappear or so, like it wouldn't start again because Godzilla was.
Wow.
Yeah, and what's really cool a little bit after that is when the movie did hit theaters and stuff. People would go to the Shibuya station where the Godzilla statue was at, the Heisei Godzilla, and they would leave like gold coins, charms, and one guy left a cigarette in Godzilla's hand. But they left them all
Nice.
like items you would leave at a grave for someone to pass on to the after,
Wow.
because like so many people were just they were sad Godzilla. This Godzilla in particular was just he was gone, so they
Right.
like he was a person, and they left little items by the statue.
There's definitely some kind of spiritual something to Godzilla. Like Godzilla really seems to, in a sense, exist. And isn't he a Japanese citizen, like a registered citizen of Japan?
Yeah, he's a registered.
So he's a registered citizen, more than a mascot. Like mascots are kind of impersonal, they're really just a symbolic thing, but Godzilla really seems like a living entity. And what's cool about Godzilla, especially from like a storytelling standpoint, is how historically accurate a lot of the situations and settings were with Godzilla. I mean, we're not just talking about 54. We're talking about the Japan's golden decade, or the thing that their bubble economy that came before their lost decade, that was kind of foreshadowed or speculated on in King Ghidorah. the whole economic capitalist fears about that and Japan's growth, inspired by the bubble economy, and then Y2K in Godzilla Millennium. I'm assuming that's what that was. That was Y2K fears with all the computers going crazy and Orga hacking into that.
That's right. Yeah, and part of it was inspired by the Millennium Tower having a data break issue. So you know the tower like Orga's ship comes on top of.
Yeah,
That's the Tokyo Data Tower, or it's like the Millennium
okay.
is what it was called at the time. Yeah, they had a issue with like just the signals, internet, and stuff going through it. And then this was actually like something else aside from the Y2K bug, but this was something just going wrong with it, and that
Yeah,
experience kind of ended up in the movie as Orga doing its thing.
which is awesome. I think it's cool that they take like historical events and blend them into a semi-fictional, semi-fantastical story.
Yeah,
Um, like there's a lot of that that's going on in these movies.
and Godzilla. Funny enough, even Godzilla '98 has it. Believe it or not. Are you familiar with the French Morona bomb test?
I wasn't like I actually like didn't know about why the French were the not the bad guys in the movie, but kind of in that movie. Like
So
everyone was mad at the French.
so like they're kind of like the like anti-hero kind of thing. So like well, I'll put it this way. So what happened was the French did an illegal hydrogen bomb test. It was
Mm,
never announced to anybody. There was no international things done to arrange it really. And they just said, oh, we got a hydrogen bomb. Let's drop it in the Polynesian Islands in 1960.
Polynesian, yep.
And it's actually the same location that you see in the '98 movie, aside from the Marshall Island footage, which they shoved in there. Like you
Right, right.
tell which one is which. But here's the weird thing about the Polynesian Islands, though. So in the movie, there's iguanas and all these other lizards there that in real life, like right now anyway, they're not there. But funny enough,
Mm,
there were iguanas on that island at one point. It was 200 so years ago. The natives, basically just they killed all of them, but there were iguanas
mm,
at one point. So the '98 movie, in some weird way, is like an alternate version of the Polynesian Islands where the lizards never went extinct, and the one of them gets mutated and becomes Godzilla, which is interesting.
right,
Yeah, but yeah, like the whole legal French test they did in the movie, and the French Foreign Legion and the French Secret Service guys, they show up in there because they're trying to cover up the mess, and the reason why they're
right,
concerned is because, well, at the time France got into big trouble when we found out about it, and
right.
we I don't remember exactly what we did, but I think we did like some punishment of like trade or something for a good while, like
Sanctions maybe.
something like that, yeah. And because, well, in the movie, the consequences of having a mutant aberration show up in New York and just
Right.
wreck things, well, if that came out, then the country would just international relations would be a mess. So the weird thing
Yeah,
about the '98 movie is that a lot of people like to say that it doesn't focus on the nuclear theme like the first Godzilla movie does, and
but it does. It's just with a different nation.
well, no, it does, but what it is, it's about the nuclear, it's about the international relations regarding nuclear deterrence, is what it is.
Mm,
Because
deterrence.
the whole thing,
Yeah.
like, okay, if somebody has a hydrogen bomb and they use it and we don't know about
Then well, it's gonna get used back, right? And you don't mutually assured destruction. Yep.
right, so it talks about that, and I wish I wish it focused on it a little bit more, but it was good. It was good they threw that in there. But
Yeah.
I like to make a joke though. The reason they did that was because they didn't just want America to do get the
I
guilt.
was g-
Godzilla did
I
it.
was gonna say they had to pick somebody else to put some blame on for nuclear something. They wanted to be kind of faithful to the original themes, but just not America.
Yeah,
But with the Cold War, you know, and that whole concept of mutually assured destruction, that does kind of expand on the issues of World War II, where we were all at war and we dropped the bombs.
Hmm.
Um, and we were kind of the pioneers of that. But at this point, at the point where 98 came out, bunch of countries probably had them. So now we have a new element of concern. It's not just, hey, this one country has bombs and we're terrified of bombs. It's like, oh, a lot of countries have bombs. So now we all need to tiptoe around each other because this is our reality now. The reality is there are nuclear weapons, whereas in Gojira, it was more like, hey, we shouldn't have nuclear weapons. Let's try not to make more of those. But now we have them, so the narrative is shifted to preventative measures and ensuring that we don't destroy each other because that's our reality. We now have nuclear war as a capability, and it will probably always be like that.
Yeah, that's
So that's cool.
the Pandora's box. Yeah, yeah,
I may have to do a video on that, and I will credit you as my information.
yeah,
Of course, I'll do my research too, but thank you for bringing that to my attention. I will do a 98 video because I don't hate that movie like everybody else. I like it as it is. It's a decent movie. It's fun. I
yeah.
enjoy it.
Yeah, it is. It is a fun movie. I actually have the press kit for the movie. I was gonna say, like, if you want me to give you some stuff, like some cool info or whatever, I
Oh
can.
yeah, I love info. It's great.
'Cause I got the whole stuff. But yeah, actually, when you mentioned World War II, whoop, there we go. I got it. I was gonna show you this real quick. Hang on. There we go. It's my grandfather's World War II compass. He had
That's
it.
awesome.
Yeah, he had it through the Battle of the Pacific and in the Marshall Islands.
Wow.
Yeah, he got to.
That's been some places.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, he got to see the whole entire Marshalls out before we did the hydrogen bomb testing and everything. And what's cool is he got to swim in the lagoon before we blew it up or we blew it.
Wow.
Yeah, so
That's crazy.
yeah,
That's really cool though.
and that goes to like my next thing I was going to ask you, which is like your experience in the Navy, right? It is the Navy, yeah. So
Yes.
yeah, so just you want to tell me like a little bit about that, like just your travels or what you've done?
Oh,
It's
it's
not
been really
classified.
good.
It's not classified,
It's it's been really good, a really good experience for me. Just being an adult and doing, this kind of thing. I think it's important. Honestly, so in Korea, it's mandatory to do service in the military. At least it is for men. You have to do service in the military. I kind of controversial opinion maybe, but just seeing how well the military sets you up and kind of takes care of you and shows you about other people and other lifestyles and stuff. I almost wish it was mandatory in the States for at least like 2 years because I think it's a really good experience that everybody kind of needs to have. And you're all going to have different jobs. So it's not like you can't pick your job or that you be forced into something you don't want to do. But I've learned so much in just the short time I've been in. I think it's like vital for people to learn.
yeah,
Big thing for me, not only just traveling the world and seeing other cultures, but even just learning of other cultures within the military, like different people, different lifestyles, different religions. Even if I strongly disagree with certain things, it helps me to develop a sense of compassion for people and a sense of understanding where they're coming from to see these different people and to understand why they believe what they believe. So, interpersonally, relationship wise, I think the military is vital. So, I would really recommend it for people who want to get off their feet. Maybe they need some financial help or they're in a tough spot. If you qualify, go ahead and join. And there's certain things you can get waived too. So like if you have any concerns, just bring it up to your recruiter. But I'm making my non-DoD sponsored recruiter pitch. Join the military, see the world, get off your feet, get some life experience. It's really good. It's been good for me.
yeah. And the funny thing, I talked to you before about this. I was gonna join the Navy. The reason why I didn't was because some other stuff I wanted to try and get done in my career was going on, and I was actually at that point where I was like, gonna go and do it and everything. But then like I had some. It's gonna sound strange, maybe, or maybe not to you. Actually, maybe just like I had this day where I heard my grandfather's voice, and it just told me like, just like, I know you want to do this to honor, me and your family, but now's not the time to do this.
Mm,
I I don't know. Some of my gut after I kind of heard that told me like, yeah, he's right, because like I have a lot of deep respect for my grandfather who was in World War.
yeah.
And, like I guess in some ways I've sort of accidentally chased his shadow a little bit
Mm,
because what I mean by
but
that,
it's
because he was an artist like me. He was,
mm,
he traveled around the world and stuff, and I've always wanted to have that experience. And just as I got older, a lot of very strange things happened where it's like me and him had a very similar experience, and
yeah,
I just yeah, just like as an honor thing, it's just I want to get my place in there, because
right.
I felt
And
like it'd be a good experience. But yeah.
yeah, and you had to learn like there's a specific path for everybody. And even though our past may resemble someone else's or we want to honor someone else, that doesn't mean we're going to have the same experiences. I can tell you right now, none of the stuff I've done is nearly as cool as what my uncle and stepdad did. And it maybe it never will be. They did also a lot of physical things, and my uncle was at war, so that could be my reality. I mean, I'm not gonna say like, I could never go to war, but the things that he was doing, he was there, he was in it. And I have a lot of respect for him for that because I don't know if I could do the same in that kind of environment. Obviously, if something kicks off, I have to be there. I will be there, but the capacity that he was, because he was infantry, so it was really bad. And I couldn't do it myself, so I respect him for that. My path is a lot different. My path is tailored to me. Um, so it's interesting that you kind of realize, I want to do this because I want to follow my family and honor my family, but I'm myself. I am me, and I have my own distinct path.
Yeah, yeah. Like for the longest time, like, it's actually the crazy thing. I had no idea for the longest time that he was, like he did art and all this other stuff, because just grandma and him just never really talked about it much. It wasn't actually till he was gone that I found all this stuff, and I was like, what? It's like nobody ever told me this. And
Yeah.
that's when it started to hit me, like the weird similarities. Now I was like, okay, now it's all starting to kind of piece together. But yeah, but I'm also, me and stuff. But like you were saying with the story, like the stories of uncle and stuff, there's a lot of stuff. Even like if I did go in, like it would just I wouldn't be able to do that again. Like another thing he did was he was part of the Department of the Interior. Do you know what that is?
Mm. Um, I've heard of it. Remind me. Because
So,
is that one of our departments, like one of our US departments, right?
mm,
Because we
it,
have several.
so it's an offshoot of like the military thing. It's the USGS. It's the United Geological Survey.
Okay.
Yeah. So when the war was over, World War II was over, the world, like the United States decided, let's map the world, right? Because they wanted to make like
Mm,
maps for everything and stuff. My grandfather traveled to like all these different states. He made parks for the net. He made not parks. He made maps for the national parks. Like
that's awesome.
he made like some of the first like grand maps we had for Alaska. Like that was
Wow.
thing. And he actually got an award for it too, which I got like right here.
Nice. That's awesome. So he's the reason I can use Google Maps today and know where I'm going.
Yes, he is partially.
That's so cool.
The sad thing though is that, well, back then they could only put things like in a code. That's how they knew like if it was yours or not. You couldn't put your
Yeah.
with the map. So that's how, like, what kind of sucks is like he did all these maps. People kind of like, they've advanced to what they have now, but nobody knows like which maps are his because the number,
Hmm.
except for me and like my father, pretty much. So that's what kind of sucks. Is like, he did all this great work, but there's nothing out there to really, for people to know that,
Right. All he could take with him is the fact that he did it and he trailblazed kind of literally. He really, put those trails on the map, but that's cool. It's really awesome.
Yeah, yeah. And with what would so I guess the easy answer would be probably Japan is your favorite place you've traveled to, but where's did you travel to anywhere else in the Navy?
Um, Not really, honestly. They sent me to Illinois for basic, and that was my first time. I don't know if it was my first time in Illinois, but my first time like being in Illinois, not just passing through. But then they sent me to Virginia for a little bit,
Last
and
thing,
I'd already lived there. So it wasn't anything new, but what was cool, it was interesting because I really wanted to go to Virginia Beach before I left for the military, and I was hoping that my parents and I could go. This was before I graduated high school. I was like, that trip we went on in 2018 to Virginia Beach was pretty awesome. That was probably my favorite trip I've been on with them, aside from going home each summer, because those trips are always fun too. But that was such an awesome trip, and they ended up sending me to Virginia Beach. So I was there,
that's
and I
cool.
got to be there like a year after I had wanted to be. Um, a year after I wanted to go there on vacation, I ended up there myself, and I walked on that beach, and it was just great. I was like, wow, life came around for me.
Really,
So I got to go.
really crowded though, isn't it?
It's crazy. Yeah, it's weird how that works, but I don't think it was an accident, and I don't think Japan was an accident either.
I've been to Virginia Beach many times. I only live four hours away from it, so uh,
Yeah,
that's so funny. You mentioned you went in 2018 because me and my me and my friends were there, and I just had this thought. I was like, "What? Maybe you might have been there like the same week we were." Because I'll tell you
were
what.
you in October? Was it October?
No, no, it wasn't October. No, it was 2 months before then. I thought it
Okay,
was in July or so.
gotcha.
July. But while we were out there, we were going swimming past like the third, fourth breaker of waves because we like to like try see if we can get out to the sandbars that form out in the water. Uh,
Yeah,
it's there was a bunch of boats that were coming out from Norfolk. It was like the Navy. I guess they were doing like some training
yeah,
out there. I was thinking to myself a little bit like, wouldn't it be funny if like you were out over there on the
right?
uh, uh it
I
was
mean, I could end up there. That is an option. They say it's like the worst station, though. It's like the worst base, so hopefully not. But my parents live in Virginia, so
yeah,
it wouldn't be the worst thing for me.
that's
Um,
so funny that you live in my same state and I never even knew this till now.
I lived in the Roanoke area.
What?
You know,
You live
yeah.
there? What?
Where do you live?
I live in Luray. I'm like 2 hours away from you.
I've seen that place on the signs.
Yes,
Lurray, right?
yeah, that's right. That's crazy.
I always pronounced it Lurie, like
No,
Murray, Luray, Lurie. That's funny. Yeah, so we live in the Roanoke area.
yeah.
It's nice out there.
I
On the
went
Blue Ridge Parkway, Shenandoah, great.
Yeah, I went to a college up near Roanoke, Radford, which is like just like
Yeah, I've heard of that. Everybody went there from high school.
yeah, I went to college there, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, that's so funny that you're the one with Roanoke. I was like, what? That's
Yeah,
crazy.
I mean,
This is a
and I'll be going there if like next Christmas, probably be there if my parents don't move.
yeah,
So
all
I
worlds.
that's a home for me, one of my homes. I have many now.
Yeah. That's just so wild, yeah. Let's see. Was another thing I was gonna ask was oh, okay, this is actually a really good one. So what do you plan to do next with your writing?
Ooh, well, I have a Godzilla book, quote unquote, in the works. And if I don't get it licensed, I will just turn the monster into not Godzilla, but everybody knows that it kind of is Godzilla. And I will change enough things to where I don't get sued. But I got that in the works, and I also just started a standalone book that I'm really happy about. I'm really excited. I might try to pitch this to a publisher. So I got to finish up my trilogy here, obviously. That's definitely one of the top priorities. But book three, I'm gonna sit on that for a little bit because I just finished book two and I'm wiped out. I'm tired of it. So I'm gonna work on my standalone and maybe a little bit of my Godzilla book.
Hmm. That's cool. And is the so the Godzilla book is actually going to be like an actual story, not like an educational book kind of
Oh
thing?
yeah, it's a book. It's a fictional story.
Okay, cool.
And I'm gonna try to make it historically relevant too. I mean, it's gonna be set in the future, but it's gonna be historically relevant to current events and kind of like projection of what I think is gonna happen. So I want to do the creators justice by keeping that historical relevance with the story and making it in the real world.
Hmm.
So yeah, there will be a Godzilla story, whether it's actually Godzilla or not. Godzilla in spirit only, instead of
Yeah,
Godzilla in name only. It
Godzilla.
will it will exist.
Well, it's I know Mr. Tomoyuki Tanaka and I would say Mr. Tanaka, my bad. Mr. Tanaka and Mr. Takarada would be very proud of you doing that. So
I would hope so because I want to do it to honor their vision. And there's several ways to go about that and several things I'd need to do and not do in order to keep faithful to their intentions while still giving a new story. So I want to treat their IP with respect because that's not my character, but I do want to do something with it that would fit in with how they define Godzilla.
yeah, and you never know. I think they're starting to open up more towards new ideas. I know back in the early 2000s, like when I was growing up, they were just really tight on everything, and Toho just would,
Right,
like it's like, oh no, we're not gonna do that. That'd be just I don't know, just they didn't want to do the licensing for it for whatever reason. So, and now we're at
right,
the point where they're opening the floodgates and like, okay, let's bring all these people in and stuff. So you
right.
never know. And even if not, like the cool thing is also is you could turn it into your own monster and it might be a big hit, like that
Maybe
it might be something else you can, it could become something,
I know my subscribers would love it. The G-Fest people would love it. I mean, that book would I could probably bring like a couple hundred copies of a book like that to G-Fest and sell out. I've sold 65 total books that had nothing to do with Godzilla at this last G-Fest. So reasonably, in a few years, as I built my rep, and came out with a kaiju book, I think it would do well. And I want to write a kaiju book. I love kaiju, so should happen.
Yeah. Yeah, and we're talking about writing kaiju. I wanted to do a book once where it had both kaiju and yokai because I've always been interested in the whole yokai thing because I feel like that's a whole untapped thing that has never been done in the West yet, quite. What
True. Yeah.
exception of like the ring, but the thing about the ring
Yeah.
though is that was a fictional story written that was it's a fictional yokai that was made up for that was written in.
Yeah.
So that's a little different, but I want to do something that actually took some of the cultural stuff and kind of turned it into its own story. But I'm taking direct inspiration from like stuff in Japan, though. You know what I
Yeah.
like?
Yeah.
I'm not just making a whole new thing. I'm taking like some part of an actual story and like adapting it.
Right.
And I thought that'd be really cool because it's just I find them so interesting because the yokai monsters they were a lot of them many were like once human or something of the human spirit that was there but it's been transformed into something else and a lot of it is like it's amplified like it's some
Yeah.
piece it's been like amplified to an abstract degree are you familiar with the School of Ghost Stories series in Japan?
I've heard the title, I think, but I don't know anything about it.
Okay, so this is actually a cool, neat little story. So, a Japanese high school teacher had all of these weird experiences with like ghosts, and his students came to him, and they had their own like weird experiences from being around the school and their life.
Wow.
And he compiled all the stories into this book. It was called School of Ghost Stories. It was a big hit in Japan, and eventually Toho got the rights to make a movie out of the book, which
Nice.
School of Ghost Stories. And it was such a big hit. There was four, like three sequels. So there's four School of Ghost Stories that were made by Toho in Japan. And then like
Nice.
they made that into an anime, which became the
Wow.
Stories anime. The anime bombed from fatigue, basically, because they did like so
Guys.
they did so much of this back in like the 90s to the early 2000s that was just kind of like, oh, we're kind of done with the whole ghost School of Ghost Stories thing. And
Right.
that's where the terrible I wouldn't say terrible, but it's actually like it's pretty funny, but it's funny in a bad way. Or that's where the terrible English dub for School of Ghost Stories
Oh.
from.
Oh, wait. Wait. Is this the one where they're like the dub is awful, like straight up just
Yeah,
we just saw
that's it.
someone played these videos for me and showed me like okay, that's why I knew I was like it was familiar to me the title like they had all this horrible super inappropriate commentary in the dubs. I know what you're talking
Yeah,
about
that's
now.
it.
I was like
That's it.
School of Ghost Stories, School of Ghost Stories. Why is this so familiar?
Yeah,
The American dub is what made it so popular. The American dub. That's right. And I was told it didn't do so well in Japan. So then they sent it to America and they just did whatever they wanted. They basically were told, "Hey, keep the original story, but do whatever you want." And they did. That I know what you're talking about now. That's hilarious.
yeah, the whole reason it didn't do well in Japan was because those four
They
movies.
were over it.
Yeah, they're just
Yeah.
it was so much of it. It was everywhere, and
That's hilarious.
yeah, but
Now I know what you're talking about. I saw some of this. Some of the horrible dub moments. Man.
one from the dub was the rabbit, the Shiratabi.
Yes, the rabbit. Yep. Yep.
Little flashbacks with the rabbit sitting there. It's like I miss him so much. His little requests, he'd just be like, like this
Yep.
voice. Yeah, that was good stuff. That was funny. Uh,
Yep. Yep. That we watched that one. That was one of the favorites. That's funny.
Yeah, I always just fall over laughing. And what's actually even funnier is some of like the I know some of the actors that did that. So
Oh man.
okay, so the main actress for the girl with like the red hair, like the redhead, is like the main character. She's the voice actress for Amy Rose in the Sonic games. And that's correct.
Wow.
I was like, because when I hear her voice, she okay. What's funny is she does Amy's voice for that little girl. So when I hear it, I don't hear the little girl. I hear Amy Rose from the Sonic games from the early
Man.
2000s.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, yeah, it's just funny. Oh, what was something else I was gonna add? Have you is there any films that you've seen that might have, aside from Godzilla, that have like influenced the writing?
Oh man. I just watched this the other day because I find myself having to watch it once a year, and for some reason it gets better every time I watch it. I love Amadeus, the 80s movie Amadeus. It's so good. I love it. I'm obsessed with it. It's great. Uh, it's just it like that is the energy I want to bring in my books. Just dramatic, but not pretentious, but definitely dramatic and bold and big. Like, and it's just between characters. This bold, brazen drama between characters is just amazing. I love that movie. I'm actually doing a review on it for my website to kind of talk about like that is my favorite movie next to Godzilla versus Hedorah. I'm obsessed with it. So I'm doing this big long review on it, why I think it's great as a storytelling tool. And I just want to bring that energy in my books. It's perfect. It's a perfect movie. So Amadeus is the number one, probably.
Okay, you're gonna hate me. I have not seen Amadeus yet. I've heard about it,
It's 3 hours.
not seen it.
Watch the director's cut because why wouldn't someone watch the director's cut? It's amazing.
Yeah, I'll
I
definitely.
just don't feel the passage of time when I watch it. I don't feel like, 3 hours. I'm like, man, I love this. I can't get enough of this. 3 more hours.
Yeah.
There are not too many notes in this movie. It's so good. If you like drama about like it's very dramatized drama. It's kind of they called it a fantasia on Mozart's life. It's not super accurate, but it is very good and it is somewhat historically accurate. I mean, you don't need to know anything about music to appreciate the movie. It's just great. It's amazing. Can't sing its praises enough.
Yeah, that's it sounds, yeah, it sounds great. And I've heard of that. I've heard that phrase too. Like they said, it was a fantasia of Mozart's life.
Yeah.
It was somebody else who was telling me about it, basically said that same phrase. So yeah, like
Yeah.
Mozart's always been interesting to me. Like I like his music a lot, and
Oh yeah.
I just I don't know that much about his personal life and stuff. So that's going to be interesting for me.
So again, he's dramatized in the movie, but in fact, he was a vulgar man. He was known for a crude sense of humor, being a bit immature. I don't know how bad he was with his finances, because in the movie, Mozart's just he's very, very immature, very boyish, very impractical, and so his wife, Constanza has to pick up all the pieces for him and ensure that he's getting jobs and getting work. And I don't know how true that is to real Mozart, but I do know that Mozart was, in fact, a crude, vulgar person, not the most mature,
You,
but
you
very gifted.
you know Stephen King's wife had to do that same thing. So his
Really?
his first book that he was writing was Carrie. He threw the
That's right.
manuscript in the trash, and his wife had to dig it out. And
That's right. I remember that.
yeah,
That's great.
yeah. So that's funny how history kind of repeats itself there.
Yeah. Man.
Yeah, really, it does. Let's see, and then something I was going to say is there anything else you want to tell the audience before we, wrap it up here in a bit?
Uh, well, if you're interested in dark fantasy slash coming of age stories, you like your coming of age stories a little bit of bite, and you like giant monsters and small monsters, go ahead and check out Daughter Darkness, Book 1 in the Mermaiden Trilogy, and stay tuned very shortly for Book 2 in the Mermaiden Trilogy to drop on Amazon. You can find all my stuff on Amazon, either through my name or through the series name.
Yeah.
So,
I'll also have the thumbnail. Well, the thumbnail. I'll have in the description the links to her works under my.
awesome.
So this is going to be great, and you'll have the chance to go and buy her books. Uh,
Yes.
and actually, I did have one more question. This was a good one because it was on the back of my mind, but I was trying to find a good way to throw it in there. So the music that you've done, right?
Yes.
So that this has always interested me is that you've juggled both writing but also doing a little bit of composing too. Like I've listened to
Yes.
it's really great. Like it's good stuff.
Thank you.
So how do you do that? Like,
So, like, technically or the process, like, mentally?
well, I would just start off like technically first.
So, recently I've been using Soundtrap. It's an online music tool, and it's got great instruments. I have the premium version because I want to use all the instruments I can. So, I use digital audio workstations, and next year I would like to be in college for music. I want to go to be a music producer. I want to produce, I want to compose, I want to be taught in real music theory. So I know what I'm talking about because everything I've done is by ear. I don't plot any notes. I can sight read, and I probably could write music if I had some guidance or, looked it up or used a program where you could write sheet music and notate, but I am not schooled on music theory, and no one's ever really taught me how to make music, so I taught myself. I just love to do it. It's just kind of just a natural thing for me, kind of like writing. Like, no one needed to teach me how to write. Obviously, people will refine you and give you critiques and stuff. That's different. But music for me is just another natural thing. And so, I don't know, I get like these melodies in my head, and then I'll remember them and I'll write them down and I'll flesh them out. And sometimes they come partially fleshed out, and I just finish the rest of the song. But I'll get this little hook or something, some kind of idea, and I'll sit down and I can get a song done in a couple hours. Like pretty, I don't want to say like complex, but a lot of different things going on, and it just flows, it just comes out, kind of like when you sit down and write. But just like writing, I can't sit down and force a melody to come. I can't sit down and force a chapter to come. I have to get some kind of insight or inspiration or idea. And once I have that little seed, plant it and it just grows and grows and grows until something's done. So the music is just very natural, very, I constantly have music in my head. I'm constantly listening to music. Like the greats, Akira Ifukube and Kao Otani and Michiru Oshima. I love them. They influence me and stuff. So I constantly have music going. I'm obsessed with it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and what I was going to say about Kira Fakube, he's great inspiration. I kind of work in some way like I listen to music, and then when I'm coming up with stuff, I can like visualize thing depending on what I'm
yeah,
listening. I like my mind kind of like makes a story out of like.
you kind of have like this music video in your head. I have music videos in my head when I do something like full on stuff happening.
Yeah, like funny you mentioned the music video thing. When I was in college, I wanted to make a music video for the song by the Eagles, Desperado, and I actually
Mm,
did the storyboards and everything for it, but I never ended up getting to the animation part because I couldn't
nice,
I couldn't find the right program. But I have the whole thing pictured out perfectly. But yeah,
nice.
do that someday. But yeah, I wanted to add that just what you're saying because yeah, when you're visualizing stuff, it's like this. It's ideas come to your head when listening to music, and I'm sure
Oh
you put
yeah,
a little bit of that, like we said, the music video thing into your books too.
oh yeah. Like I've got songs where it's just as soon as I heard it, I was like, that is this character. That is this part of the book. That is this book. And I recently came to the realization, I don't know how I recently came to it because I've known this song for years, but Welcome to the Family by Avenged Sevenfold perfectly describes my protagonist situation.
Hmm.
You know, hey kid, why won't you listen? What's with the violent aggression? Yeah, like it's the same thing. Welcome to the family. I need to warn you that there is no way to justify. It's just like that perfect. It's perfect for her. So there'll be songs where I'll visualize her in that situation, or I'll visualize certain characters or moments. It's like that song is perfect. So music is really important for writing as well.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, 100%. And you kind of answered the other part of the question, which was like, what do you do mentally? Like, like what goes into your music a little bit. But if there is something else you want to add to that, though, you can go ahead. I mean, is there something else like you add to it? Like, like I mean, like mentally when you're music.
Hmm. It's really difficult to describe because uh I just I'll just do something sometimes, and then sometimes I don't even go into it with a narrative or with an idea. Like the narrative comes after I've written the song. I recently did this actually. It's a song I'm gonna release once I finish it. It's almost finished. It's very 80s sounding. It's got like kind of this distorted synthesizer sound. Like it's a little off key, but intentionally, because that's the way the synth instruments sound. And it's supposed to be about nostalgia and how faulty it is, how you can't really rely on the golden memories of the past because in reality, nothing was ever truly that great. Like, yes, we had great moments and great times, but when you're living in the moment, you don't realize how good you have it or how bad you have it or had it when you look back. So the song just has this distorted sound and immediately like I visualize my childhood growing up as a 2000s kid. And I visualize like all the times I've been nostalgic for the 2000s. It's like, you know what? This reminds me of home. It's the song's called Home. It reminds me of home, which is not just the place, but the idea of where I came from, the time that I was born in, the time I grew up in, a sense of childhood and home and growing up, and how faulty it was, how sweet it was, how bittersweet it was, how unreliable it is to be nostalgic, because at the end of the day, nostalgia is deceptive. So that's what you can hear it in the song. The song's like very kind of lonely sounding and distorted and grand. So I'm really excited about that one. I'm gonna have to get that out soon.
Yeah, and I 100% agree with nostalgia. Yeah, it does kind of put like a little bit of a blindfold on you a little bit, but
Yeah,
at the same time, like I look at it like this, that there really is no perfect decade in any part of the world.
no,
But there is one thing too, which is that you do need to remember what why the past was important though, which is that
yes,
that way you
yep,
make the future better. So like
right.
one thing I will say is that yes, like you know, again, there is no perfect decade, but there are things in previous decades that were better than how they
Oh
were,
yeah, absolutely,
and that
absolutely,
is to look at it and figure out, okay, why was this better than
right.
you know, like a great
And I think there's that sense of longing that's in the song. Like there's really a kind of haunted sense in the song. There is a longing in there. Like there's truth and there's dishonesty that the synth instruments kind of make reality. The deceptiveness of nostalgia, but also the reality that being a child was easier. It was simpler, it was safer. And the time that I grew up in was different than it is now. I think we could all agree we're living through some tense times right now. And that wasn't the case when I was a kid, or at least I don't remember it being the case. And I know that when I talked to my mom, who would know, she said, yeah, I kind of got sad when the first cell phones started coming out because I thought this was going to change everything for the worst. And I was right. She said the internet becoming so widespread, it was just easier when you were born. It was easier back then when we had old YouTube and old cell phones. And so even she could tell me reliably, it was better in certain ways than it is now. With the technology, with the tensions, with stuff going on, it was just different, different times.
it's I think it's because you lose a little bit more of the human spirit when you try to artificially replace it is the thing.
Yes.
Like a great like some I don't know if you ever figured this out. You know, basically the television is what the fireplace used to be, you know? Like when
Yeah.
it's like let me tell you, like so what did we do like when we were like in before we had television, we had like wars and all that stuff. Well, the thing was the campfire because we all learned to tell
And
stories.
talk.
We
Yep. And tell stories.
stuff, right? That was how we did stuff, and it was good because through social osmosis, that's how we kind of grew stronger. But we also like learned to develop like our our social skills and stuff more. Well,
Right.
the other thing too is like with the phones and everything is that it's split us up, and everyone's been wondering like why is everybody so depressed? Well, the reason why everybody's so depressed is because we're you social beings. We're designed to be together. Like it's
Right.
they've looked into this. It's actually like us like not having communities as much anymore actually makes us depressed because
Right.
and there's a reason why. The reason why is because in groups it was figured out that we'd survive better. When we're split off, we have this internal fear that we're going to die if we don't
Yeah.
have us. And
Right.
it's because like for eons, it was either, you came together and settled your differences, or the natural elements or another tribe would kill you. And that's
Yep.
all this new stuff we have is very new. It's a very new world that we've got. And even though it's been around for like, 500 or so years, that's not long enough for like evolution or our body to like, or just something unconscious in us to just snap out of that. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
Right.
That's the reason. That's the thing. You're taking out one of the most important things of the human soul and trying to replace it. And the problem is you can't do it because you can't
We've
trick.
been hijacked.
Well,
We've been hijacked with social media, but it's antisocial.
right. It's
It's
answer
not.
really, yeah.
We've
Because
been sold a new reality that is not real.
yeah,
And we
absolutely.
know it's not real. We sense that. We know that the pictures we see online of other people may or may not be real. That the lives they talk about, all their successes may or may not be real. And the failures they don't talk about, you know, social media hides a lot and it encourages a lot of just self-destruction, really.
Yeah.
And it genuinely sucks because I never got to grow up beyond my very younger years. I never got to see people be normal like how they're supposed to be. I didn't get that experience. When I was in high school, everybody had their phones, everybody had Snapchat. That was it.
Mm. I
And it's
I
weird.
yeah, I grew up in that time shift where it was starting to happen. It was middle school for me, and I guess like you were in elementary school, I guess, like when it's
Hmm.
I guess like timeline wise, I'm trying to figure this out. But
Yeah.
I before the phones and everything, like so our parents all had the flip phones, which we joked and called the toy.
Mm.
Dad had the Nokia brick, which would break the
Oh man.
if it dropped,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. That it's how we talked was we had like Game Boy Advances we'd bring and
Oh
just
yeah.
yeah, and then when the DS came out in 2005 or '06, we'd all be on the bus and we'd have Picto chat, and that's how we texted each other.
Nice.
We drew
Nice.
pictures and sent them to each other. That's how we did it. And then
It's
high school,
funny.
then that's when it became affordable to get cell phones, and then that's when we all started having phones and stuff. And the weird thing is that I remember when that happened is when I started to feel this, like again, this loneliness that we all feel now.
Hmm.
Like I was starting to feel
Right.
because the difference with the Picto Chat thing on the DS was that we were all in the same room, but we were like drawing notes and sending them to each other. So it was different.
Right.
We could look at our friend like who's 2 seats behind me and be like, "Oh, I see what you did there," that kind of thing. Because we're in the same room. There's still a human connection happening. It's not like like you're talking to someone 100,000 miles away in like a text box and stuff, and you're not having the same like deep stuff happening like physically. You know what I
Right.
mean? There's something cut off physically because of that, and it's
Yeah.
because of that. It's you're lonelier more because it's you're not with people, and it's very much like you said. This whole new reality has shifted it to where it's like nobody's around in groups anymore.
No.
It's designed to really just like kind of shift us around a lot. So
That's why I love GFest so much, getting to meet all these online people in person and see that, oh, you're real, I'm real. We can all confirm that now. And having real conversations, people coming up to my table, that was cool. And doing the panels to a room full of real people, not like a broadcast audience on YouTube, but a real audience right there. I could see every look that passed their faces. They came up and talked to me. I mean, that was cool.
yeah,
I
yeah,
needed that.
yeah.
Yeah. I think a lot of people need that.
I was at your I went to your table and I came by a couple times like I was coming through the dealer's room where you were at in the little artist alley, and yeah, I saw a bunch of like your fans. I saw like was it 4 people getting your book, and some of them I actually recognized from the whole online community thing. I was like, oh, look at this,
Yeah.
look, she's
Yeah.
getting her feet
Mutual
wet.
friends.
Great.
Right. That
So
was so cool. And
yeah.
then, and like, here's the thing. Speaking of books, like, I found that in-person sales guarantee sales. Whereas posting something online where all the content, like just the whole content sludge pipe, people just don't care as much when you try to sell a book online than if I went up to them and say, hey, look, I got a book here. Then they would buy it if I said it in person and talk to them in person because that means something. But I just feel annoying and annoyed when I post links online like, hey, the book's up, but I have to do it. But it's so much more meaningful. to get in-person sales or to even just talk about people or talk about it with people in person. And the internet, because there's so much content.
Yeah, you have to.
On the one hand, it guarantees you'll always have some kind of audience because there's people who will rapidly consume content. On the other hand, it's really hard to sell a lot or do a lot when you are swimming upstream with a bunch of other people. So that was a great event to meet people, talk to people, and have real sales. That was cool.
Yeah, and it's because it's authentic. Like you're really there, and
Yeah,
the emotions are going back and forth. And again, like it's just it's like okay, like this is legit, you know. And the other thing too is you don't have to deal with the algorithm, like you know, like
right,
nobody sees it because it drowns everything out because of they want to post Google ads every 5 minutes or something, you know.
right, exactly. It's so much more personal and so much better.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it's genuinely more monetarily rewarding. It's rewarding on all fronts.
yeah,
So
yeah.
it's
And
been great.
in closing here, if let's say we got like some young writers or just upcoming writers who want to like get their feet wet and stuff, what advice would you give them?
I would say write the story you want to write, let it sit for a while, go back and reread and revise and edit, and don't give up on the story. If you really believe you got something there, have other people read it, give you advice, read it yourself, and see what you feel needs to change about it, but keep with it. And the more you write, the better you will get. I mean, everybody says that, but it's true. My first book is leagues below my current writing level. And I'm sure I will say that in like 2 months about my second book. Your writing's going to improve, and you need to just publish the first book. That doesn't mean don't put effort in, don't be afraid to or yeah, criticize it, but you do need to put it out there eventually because your first book is not going to be great if you are looking to write books. Your first book is not going to be probably a major success, even if you're like a seasoned adult. So just write the book. Get an editor. Please get an editor for your developmental editor looks at your plot. Believe in your story, write it, revise it, and publish it, and then get feedback. And when people tell you things, take it to heart, think about it, and fix what needs to be fixed if you feel that it needs to be fixed yourself, and then keep publishing, keep writing. Your book's going to appeal to somebody. So it's best to get it out there and get it available. And you're living in an age where there's an unprecedented level of content out there that you can also join, which means that somebody somewhere will eventually stumble across your work. There's so many people online, so many people available, so much content that you actually can do better in some ways. So don't be afraid of that. Don't be afraid of competition. Get your book done, find your readers because they exist.
Beautifully put, Alyssa. Beautifully put. Yeah, that's
Thank you.
that's great. And was so we're gonna be calling it here, and this is gonna be the end of the episode. Want
Awesome.
and check out Alyssa's work. Uh, she's got some great stuff. Beautiful,
Thank you.
beautiful writing. And
Thank you.
yeah,
I try.
yes, yeah, like she's got some really good material and like some good stories to tell. So I have them the link below in the YouTube video, and just we'll go see you later. Check out the next episode of Visionary Dawn. I have a little surprise we're bringing on next, and we might have a list
Nice.
back on sometime later because I would like to bring it back
Sweet.
more about Japan stuff pretty soon.
Yes. Be
Yes.
awesome.
Yeah. So
Thank you for having me on.
of course. So and hang on, let me get this. Stop recording.